Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob from Rob's Game Group. And welcome to another OSR world building video. This is episode 3. I'm going to talk about creating kingdoms and guilds for your world and breathing some life into those. But first we're going to start with me answering a question from one of our viewers that was rather lengthy. I'm just going to focus on the question part of it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Feel free to send me whatever. But I felt like there was enough that I needed to say about this that I need to do it on video. And honestly, I'm lazy. I didn't want to type that much. So, excuse me, the question comes, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. If not, I apologize. Paulo Frota? He asked, what's your vision on story versus world building? I've seen a lot of videos from an author whose games I really like while defending that, quote, the GM should not be a storyteller, should not create a story, but instead create a world, end quote. The idea being that the world is living and things are going to happen and change the setting. For example, the PCs hear about an invading army. The GM should not force them to fight the army, and then in parentheses, that is, the GM should not have the outcome of the story predetermined. But if they decide to ignore this army to do other stuff, fine, but the army will invade and things will happen that might impact the setting and PCs. And the GM should not protect the PCs from these events. So it's an interesting question, and I think I've seen some of those same videos that you're talking about, and to an extent I do agree, and then I also disagree, but it depends on the extreme points of either end of that spectrum that you're looking at. Because there are some GMs who are like, well, you know, I'm playing in this world. This is basically the setup for my world, and then I'm just dropping adventures in. But the world is also kind of stagnant. There's nothing really going on ever, except for the adventure modules that the PCs are playing through. I don't particularly care for that. To me, that's literally one step from what I talked about in a previous video, where there's no real world outside of the module, and you're basically playing the game in an echo chamber. Now, to be fair, if that is the way that you and your friends enjoy playing the game, by all means, you're enjoying playing the game, and that's what matters at the end of the day. But like I said before, these videos are for those of us who are interested in trying to bring the world around the PCs to life. And I feel if you write a story that is based around the PCs, this I don't like to do. I have done it before, but I don't care for doing it for a multitude of reasons. Specifically, if a particular PC or player character or player can't make it to game night, it can throw a wrench in the whole thing for everybody, and that's irritating. But more importantly, if you write your adventure and it is based around the PCs themselves, then every time they go off script, you're going to have your work cut out for you to get them back on track. The railroad track, that is. Because that's really what you're doing. I mean, you're railroading them to play parts in a melodrama that you've either written or purchased and you think is really cool. But if we're talking about the campaign world, then the world is hinged on these heroes. I don't feel that most OSR characters, especially early on, are really heroes. Especially not nation or world-changing heroes, because they start off fairly weak, and it takes time to build them up. one of the things with modern D&D, they put a lot of emphasis on backstory and who your character was and so on and so forth before you even start. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you are kind of a superhero uh, in D&D with the safety on. And you've already done cool things and you're really powerful. And you are compared to an OSR character. And yes, OSR characters can die a lot faster than they can in 5th Ed or Pathfinder. So a lot of people don't spend as much time on the backstory. And being one of those guys who played old school back in the day, and some of my friends at the table, we've talked about this recently in the fact that your character builds their story from the experiences they have, not whatever you wrote in there that they did before they started adventuring. So that some of our most memorable characters over the years have been characters that started off kind of nobodies and then progressed and managed to survive the first few levels and then eventually went on to do really big things. And those characters stick out in our minds. But I'm getting off topic. Let's get back to the world building versus storyteller thing. I think, and this is my opinion. I feel like that's two sides of the same coin. You can only look at one side of it, but you can also flip that coin quite a bit and intertwine the two. So if you're not going to just railroad the PCs and make the whole campaign about them from the beginning, instead you want an overarching storyline going on in your world so that it is a living, breathing world around them, how do you get them interested in your meta plot without making it the focus of the game? That's the only thing going on in the game. Well, in my game, like I said in a previous video, the PCs have a home that they inherited that's a home of an ex-adventurer. And I talked about how I can drop seeds for adventures, aka modules, whether it's ones I wrote or ones I bought, through the use of old books in the library, maps, something scrawled on the back of a shield from a wall, that kind of thing. I can also use NPCs to drop hints about things that can lead them into any of these modules that I bought. I just kind of pre-plan. If they find this and they look into it, it leads to this adventure module. If they find this and look into it, it leads to this adventure. This is all stuff that goes in that handy-dandy GM's notebook. But like I said, your NPCs can drop those seeds too. And the first thing you have to understand about doing that is that your player characters may not care about the meta plot. As long as they're having fun, though, who cares? In my game, the way I might do it, I might dangle a carrot of info out there, and I might do it something like this. So let's say that I have an invading army, and it's run by a zealot cult from across the sea. Now they've come across the sea, and they've attacked my one of my big port cities, Frostport, and they've taken the port. Well, they didn't just attack by sea. I know, because of my meta plot, that they brought ships over and they attacked the bay, but they also had spies for years that had infiltrated the city, and just prior to the attack, they assassinated the nobles from all the noble houses, and caused confusion behind enemy lines, which helped the invading force take the city. That's pretty cool, but that's almost 100 miles away from where my players are. So having someone run up to them and tell them all about it is a little unrealistic and kind of, let me take you by the nose and drag you into the story. Instead, what I suggest is letting them find out by feeling the repercussions. For instance, let's say that when they visit their local town near them, or even Altara, they find that when they go to their favorite tavern, they find that a certain very popular ale or wine that they like to get has either gone way up in price or is non-existent. It's off the menu. They can't get it. And they're inevitably going to ask why. And that's when they can be told that the item is currently hard to get since the supply lines from Frostport have been shut down. Okay, well, there's your adventure seed right there that's not tying them specifically to a module, but letting them know that something happened in Frostport or at Frostport because the supply line shouldn't be shut down. So what happened? So maybe they start investigating. It could spur them to investigate, and then again, maybe it doesn't, but let's assume it does for the moment. Maybe they start heading towards Frostport. As they get closer to the city, they come across bodies of magic users that have been hung by the neck on the roadside as a warning from this new religious sect of zealots that has taken the city. And you can see here how I'm setting things up to draw them further and further into the story. But what if they don't take the bait? What if they shrug the whole thing off and they want to just dive into more dungeons? So be it. Let them. Remember all those adventure seeds that we talked about in the last couple of videos that we have set? Like I have mine between NPCs and the house that they have. There's plenty of places for adventures to be found. Well, they're there and they will keep them busy and having fun, and that's all that matters. Maybe your meta plot that you find interesting for your world isn't interesting to them and they just want to dive dungeons. So let them. You've already set up everything for them to dive the dungeons. You've dropped the seeds and it's just waiting on them. If they don't want to interact with the overarching story, you can still have it affect them. Weapon prices can go up. This religious order could start pushing further in and shutting down temples of the faith that the player characters are following. All of those are legitimate things that can start affecting them, and they find that they may need to deal with these people later on. Regardless of which way it goes, that's why I say it's two sides of the same coin, because you want to have the aspect of the world building, but you also want to have the aspect of the storytelling in there, because you don't really know which way the players are going to go unless you just sit and railroad them. And when it's an obvious railroad, it's, let's face it, it's less fun. Over time, like I said, you can slip in more things that affect a party if you want to. Or you can just let it be and just let it play out in your head what happened to the city of Frostport. As long as you and your party are having fun, whether it's playing towards the plot that you got going on, or whether it's playing the modules that you have preset by dropping adventure seeds, either way, it's a win-win for everybody. So, Paulo, I hope that helps. I hope that I wasn't too long-winded. I guess I was. That was like 14 minutes on explanation. But I hope that it helps somewhat. If not, message me in here and we'll discuss it some more. Let's see. So let's talk about kingdoms, cities, towns, and guilds. So not only do you need to have your plot of things that are going on in the world to make it a living, breathing world going on around the players, but you don't want all of your locations to be flat. How much time and effort do you want to put into it? Well, remember we picked that adventuring area, so they have their spot, and then the surrounding area has a big city near it and a couple of small towns. What I would do is I would flesh those out with maybe, working up what kind of population is there, how much of a population there, what kind of ruling class do they have in the city, what kind of, there are actually books full of, really great random charts you can get to fill a town with all kinds of businesses and NPCs as well. Um, you want more than just a name for those. You want to have some idea of what is the religious, if you're even using religion, what is the religious temperament like in the town? Are they very accepting of magic users, or do they really hate dwarves and don't want them in their cities or towns, whatever? You can take in just a paragraph or two and kind of flesh out some background info to give you a feel for each town and city or hamlet or whatever that's near where the PCs are going to visit. And then other places that are further away that they're maybe likely not to visit as often, if ever. I would just put in a line or two. I wouldn't even too much worry about who's, running the show there, but maybe just a line or two of descriptive text of what the city is like, or the town, or the hamlet, or the village, whatever, so that you have some idea of what kind of place it will be when the PCs start heading that direction. You know what you're looking at. You already have an idea for your framework to start fleshing it out between sessions so that it's ready when they get there. You can have political intrigue, and you don't have to go super deep with it. You could say that City A is having a lot of political issues with City B because of disputes over trade routes or taxation or whatever, and just kind of leave it at that. If your players never go there because they don't care, or the adventure just doesn't lead there, then you've got a basic idea, but you didn't have to spend a lot of time fleshing it out. If they do decide that they're going to go this route and they're going to go and check out this, whether it's part of your meta plot or not, it's always good to have at least some idea of what you need to work towards and what the political climate's going to be like there, and so on and so forth. The other thing you want to look at is guilds. Now, a lot of people hear the word guilds in RPGs and they automatically think, Thieves Guild. And that's because it's the one that's probably used the most. But there are guilds for artisans, there are merchants guilds, you can use guilds for all kinds of stuff. But for the sake of old school role playing, let's talk about guilds, especially from a thief standpoint. You want to have a name for your guild, something cool. I'll leave that up to you. But you also want to have some kind of idea of what the guild is like. Not every guild is going to be okay with every type of breaking the law, basically. You may have some thieves guilds that are specifically, they're into running con jobs and thievery and just, increasing their holdings with money. And then you may have some that support as far up as like assassinations, kidnapping, slavery. But they may not all, like there may be a guild that specializes in slavery. And hopefully when your players find out about it, they want to shut that down. Because that's what heroes do. And basically decent people in general. But that's not the point. The point is you want to give some kind of flavor to your guild. You can have two guilds basically at each other's throats because, this guild is focused on running con jobs in the town, but you've got another guild that has moved to town and they've started kidnapping people. Well, that's not good. So maybe these two guilds are having a guild war that's going on, a shadow war that's going on that people aren't seeing. Another one that you can use, and these are just ideas that I'm spitballing because you want to take the concept of the guild and give some kind of life to it other than, well, there's a thieves guild. Okay. Well, what are they like? What are they into? What kind of stuff do they do? These are the things, like, why you need to ask yourself, why is the thieves guild there? And you don't have to do a ton of work with it. You could actually probably answer this in a paragraph. But for instance, let's say I have a thieves guild in Altara, and they have their membership process that they go through before you can join them, so on and so forth. But what you come to find out about this particular thieves guild is that they have a Robin Hood complex. They specifically target big businesses, fat merchants, and by that I mean money fat. The merchant might be fat too, who knows. But nobles, so on and so forth, and they steal money from them and then recirculate it back into the lower class. So you have a thieves guild, but not everybody hates the thieves guild in town. Yes, the rich nobles want this thieves guild stamped out because they're losing money to it. But all of the poor people or lower class people in the town are probably really supportive and will do what they can to help hide members of this thieves guild because these people are bringing them coin to help them out. So it makes for an interesting far more interesting than, well, there's a thieves guild in town. So there you go. That one's there's your free one I just threw you. So I guess my point is that whether your city, town, village, or guild is tied into your overarching world plot, or whether it's just localized to a particular town, you want to give it a couple of paragraphs maybe of, especially if it's places they're going to go and people they're going to deal with, who a few of the important NPCs are, what the political climate, religious climate is like in the town or the city, village, whatever. And just make a few notes on that. And you don't want to write 2 or 3 pages on tons of information on this one NPC or this one business in this town or whatever, because most players are not going to retain that kind of information when you go to read it to them or let them read it or whatever. If you're writing a book, a world setting book, that's one thing. But when you're talking about doling this information out to players, a few sentences to give a descriptive text, maybe to drop an NPC name, that's pretty much all they're going to retain. And I'm not talking down to players, I'm just talking even as a player. I tell people constantly, you should be taking notes on this. You should be taking notes on this. But when I play, I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking notes. I hate taking notes. But so I try to I'm like, I'll remember. Just like they do with me. And then I don't. So that's why I suggest that you keep it brief, but give yourself just a few sentences to give your places that are in the locale some depth. All right? That is pretty much all I've got for this week on this subject. I will probably do a couple of more of these. If you guys have questions, which you already have had some, but if you have questions for me about OSR world building and how I do it, feel free to put them in the comments. You can also hit me up at Rob's Game Group on Facebook. The link to that group will be in the comments as well, as long as I remember to put it in there. Yeah, and if you enjoy these kind of videos, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, thumbs up, because that's what helps them circulate. But tell people how this is the best channel on YouTube. I mean, it's not, but you could tell them that. And share it with your mom, your brother, your sister, your preacher, whoever. Share it with everybody. And until next time, good gaming and good luck.